Hi, everybody. Yeah, it's me, Jody. It's been a few seconds. I've been wanting to do this for a while, but I'm put pro in the word procrastination, so I haven't gotten around to it. A lot has happened in the last 4 years since I left you all. I think Waco was my last. Well, actually, Johnson City was my last video, and then we headed to Waco. And I'm not sure how much I've told you guys. So if you're new to the channel, or if you held on all these years, let me just explain a little bit of how I got where I am today. I announced in the fall of 2019 that I was going to take retirement in 2020. I used to teach at a regional college in or regional university in the state of Missouri, which is where I'm from. And I had hit the 80 and out and the 3 extra years so that I could get some payout from my pension plan, and it was all ready to go. Well, I also found out in the fall of 2019 that my youngest brother, Stephen, was diagnosed with terminal cancer. It was diagnosed as lung cancer, but it really started in his kidneys a couple of years before he had had that. So, anyway, as sad as that may sound, I was actually very happy then that I was going to be retiring because I knew at some point he was going to need me to be there for him full time. But I had a couple of years before that, and so that was in 2020. My sister and I took that trip to Texas, which is where I left you. We came home very quickly, which is why in 2021, early, like in January, February 2021, because he had COVID. He had gotten COVID, and we were very worried, obviously being immune compromised as he was. But he did okay, got through it. I mean, it was a pretty bad cold. So then I headed out by myself because we were expecting an ice storm, and that was the big ice storm that hit Texas. Not a lot to report on my winter activities because I usually ended up in either Arizona or Texas. And since I'll be there again, I will have video from them. And that's kind of what, in the last couple of years, why I've wanted to get back on, because I would love to be able to look back on where I've been in the last couple of years. I have pictures, and I'm going to be sharing those with you here in a minute. But I think a video would really be nice. So, anywho, life kept throwing curveballs at me here. So then I guess it was the spring or summer of 2022, my brother's cancer had moved into his spine. And we didn't know at the time, but he was having backaches and asked me if I would come down and stay with him. Well, then I did, and turns out, yes, he indeed had it on his spine, and he ended up in a wheelchair. So I knew I was going to need to be there for him full time. Being the procrastinator I am, I still had my house in Missouri, in North Missouri. He was in South Missouri. But, God finds a way. My neighbor at my house there in northern Missouri, northwest Missouri, was working in real estate, and she reached out to me and said, would you be interested in putting your house up for rent or to rent your house? And I was like, oh, that would be kind of so helpful right now because I wasn't ready to go through the process of selling it and all that. It was just too much going on. So God bless her. We did that, worked it out. I rented it for about a year and a half before I sold it. So anyway, that got rented, and I moved up there, threw almost everything away or donated the rest of it. I made very little money on what I had. I've never been one who had valuable things. I'm a Walmart shopper. It's like I'm all about the function. So a lot of it just went to trash. Some of it went to, when you live in a college town, you always have international students who have to come over here with very little stuff. You have, friends who are willing to donate to and things like that. So anywho, got that all taken care of and moved in with my brother and spent a year and a half taking care of him. And just because he didn't have legs, he was quite capable of otherwise. So anywho, the November of 2022, he and I decided, well, I kind of twisted his arm because he loved traveling and he loved photography. He was an amateur photographer, but very, very talented. He was in the ministry field otherwise, but he loved that. Well, he had always wanted to go to Monument Valley and to Horseshoe Bend. And so I said, let's go. I hadn't been to either. And so we decided to go. So we just took the car and stayed at hotels because it would have been just too difficult for him to get into my RV and that kind of things. It was still driving the Thor Vegas, which you guys probably have seen. And anywho, so we went to Utah in the south, and Arizona, northern Arizona. And we went to Monument Valley. We went to Horseshoe Bend. And then we went up to Arches and Canyonlands and Gooseneck State Park. And he had just a blast. It was a lot of fun. he was able to do almost everything. The funniest was, or the hardest, I should say, was when we were at Horseshoe Bend there in Page, Arizona. And he had done all the research on accessibility, and he said the path was quite accessible. And the path was accessible. They just didn't tell us that it was down a very steep hill. But I was not going to give up. So we got him down the hill just fine. And sunset came, and we took the picture, and it's still, light enough out. And we're walking back up. And oh my God, I was just put my head down. I said, we're going to make it. If it's dark by the time we get to the car, but we're going to make it. So I put my head down, and I'm wheeling him up the path, and he's trying with his arms. And, another angel stopped. There's a man and his wife, and they had 2 kids in a wagon, and they went by us, everybody was just going by us, bless their hearts. But this couple stopped, and the guy turned around. He came back, a young guy, and he said, would you mind if I helped? And I was like, would I mind? So fortunately, he helped us up, but Steve got to see that. And I mean, it's just cool things happened. When he wanted to go to Monument Valley, and we'd seen this video where there's this hotel there at Monument Valley run by the tribe, and all of the patios look out on, or balconies look out on Monument Valley, and he wanted a sunrise picture so bad. So when we first started planning the trip, that was not available, but we had to move things. He had things, I had things, and finally we figured out a date. I tried one more time, and the hotel had an opening. So, I don't know what I believe, but I just know I believed that happened. And so anyway, so that was a great trip that we got to take, and all these pictures that I'm showing you now, that Forrest Gump Hill. This picture of Steve at Forrest Gump Hill when he's in his wheelchair just meant the world. And that's the picture that now stays on his Facebook site. And that was used at his funeral, which happened in February. That we went on that trip in November of 2022, and he died in February 10th of 2023. So that was the curveball. So that I was his trustee for his account, although my sister was amazing help. So she and I, got through his stuff and got his house sold and got all that done. And then then I decided that I was starting to have some trouble with the Thor Vegas, particularly the plumbing, which is not the thing you want to have problems with. And it was that the guy who had it before the couple I bought it from, the guy who had it first, had it put in a macerator pump afterwards, after he got it. And the macerator pump had gone out on my sister and I, and it just was not working properly. And when I had someone look at it, they said, it's just not hooked up right. And it was just a big mess. And so I thought, okay, Steve's passed. I've got some money from that, and I'm going to get rid of the Thor Vegas and get me a truck and a trailer, because I really wanted something that I would be able to park and hook up and do all that kind of stuff, and have something separate than to drive around. The Vegas wasn't bad. I just had to unhook, electric. That's not bad. But it was kind of big and bulky and just hard to go to places that I wanted to go to. So I ended up looking and found Winnebago. It was a flex model, mini Winnie flex model or micro mini, I should say, flex model, that had all the bells and whistles with the solar and all that. It was very small. And just some things I didn't think to look for, and that it didn't have. But I spent a year on it, and I took a trip that was I left on July 20th, and I remember that because that's my brother's birthday. I left on July 20th of 2023 and took really what I considered my second bucket list. My first bucket list trip was the Acadia National Park. Now, I'm not going to share any pictures from Acadia. My sister's channel, my sister did one, and she does a fantastic job. So I'm going to, in the description, I'm going to give a link to her travel channel, and you can check out the Acadia trip there. So we did do the Acadia trip. That was when my brother was still alive and doing okay. And then, but when I took out in July of 2023, yes, I wanted to go on the Pacific Coast Highway. That had always been a dream of mine, was to go down the Pacific Coast Highway, and I wanted to go from the north to the south. Now, I was getting a late start because it was already towards the end of July. But I headed north to Minnesota. I have a friend there in Minnesota, and I wanted to visit her. And plus, it was July, so I wanted to get some cool weather. So I went up to Minnesota, and I stayed. I went to Lake Itasca State Park, and got to see the headwaters of the Mississippi River. Sort of a dream of mine to walk across the Mississippi River. And then I just headed west. I went through Montana. I got stuck in Montana for a while. Oh, wait, I forgot. There's some states in between there. So went through North Dakota, God bless you, North Dakota. The Theodore Roosevelt National Park is definitely a must-see if you're in North Dakota. And I did stop there and got to see that, so that was very nice. And, you know, Fargo. I got to go to Fargo and see the wood chopping machine from the movie Fargo, because I was a big fan of the movie Fargo. So I got to see that, so that was kind of fun. And then, let's see, I made it to Montana, and oh, God, what a beautiful state. But about that time, I started having some electrical problems with my Flex. It just, the batteries were not charging the way they should. It just, you know, sometimes the 12 volt would go out. Couldn't quite figure out what was going on. So I found a dealer there in Billings. I think it was Billings. And very nice, but it was going to take them, you know, like a couple, 3 weeks to get me in, as it does. So I thought, well, you know, if you're going to be stuck somewhere in August, September, where are you going to, you know, Montana, it'd be so rough. So I was in Montana for almost 3 weeks, I think it was. So I went, traveled around, stayed at some beautiful places. Since I had been in the Mississippi headwaters, I thought I'd go to the Missouri headwaters, which is near Three Forks in Montana, which is really cool, speaking of Three Forks, because I was watching Yellowstone. I didn't want to watch Yellowstone. I like the other ones, but I thought, you know, I need to watch it since I watched the 2 prequels. So I started watching Yellowstone, which was just a blast to watch in Montana because all of the places they talk about are there. So I spent a good 3 weeks in Montana. It was absolutely gorgeous. Got to see like I said, the headwaters of the Missouri. Went up to Glacier, even though I didn't have a pass because I was so late in getting it. So I wasn't able to reserve a day pass to get in. But I also had read that if you get there after 3, you can go in. And, you know, in August, after 3 is a long time. You get that the sun is still out. So I made it up to Glacier just for the day. I was staying like an hour and a half away from it, or maybe even further. So I didn't get to stay there very long, but it was absolutely beautiful. And I got to drive the Going to the Sun Road, which was definitely on the travel list. I like travel list. I know Marissa and Let's Jump More Journey always says travel list instead of bucket list. So I did go on the, like I said, on the Going to the Sun Road. And that's a good, you know, why I was really happy that I had the truck and the trailer, because I was able to take the truck. And Mia, my dog Mia, she much prefers, honestly, to stay in the trailer than to drive around in the truck with me. She doesn't really like the truck, although she wants to be with Mama, but she's always safe enough in the trailer when I have it hooked up. So anywho, went through that, and then saw Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center. That was cool. I don't remember where that was, but I want to say Great Falls. But anyway, so I went to there, and then like briefly about an hour in Idaho, because you just go across Idaho from Montana, and ended up in Washington. I always get Washington and Oregon mixed up into Washington. And then made my way across Washington until I got over to like Forks. Okay, because Forks is, you know, from the show Twilight, the movies. And so I wanted to go there. Plus, it was on the way to the ocean. And that's, to me, was the most important part of this trip, is when I got to the Pacific Ocean, because that had been my goal, was to get to the Pacific Ocean. So that was really thrilling. And so I have all these pictures of me getting to the Pacific coast, and all these pictures of me going down the Pacific coast. Now, I only was able to make it to California because by that time I was starting to get into late October, and I knew I wanted to be home for Thanksgiving. It was going to be the first Thanksgiving that we were without my brother, and my sister is very sentimental, as was my brother, and so I knew that I wanted to be home for Thanksgiving for her. So I only made it to like Northern California, and I will go back at some point and finish that Pacific Coast Highway. But what a thrill it was to get to see this as I had wanted to see it anyway, to go from the north to the south. So I've been sharing some pictures here of the different places that I went to, and just as I kind of get back in the swing of things, I don't want to make this video too long. That's why I'm going to make it into 2 parts. I want to show you, you can see behind me that I'm in a new trailer, and this isn't the Winnebago. This is an Ember 21 MBE. No, that's Master of the British Empire. Let's see here, FBE, front bed, there we go. It's an FBE. And so I will do a video where I take you around, show you all that. It's a mess right now, and I'm getting ready to leave. I'm moving to the next site, and so I'll be cleaning up for that. So we'll take a tour of it when we get to the new site. So while procrastination is probably the #1 reason I have not got back onto YouTube, There's really a couple other things that have kind of contributed, especially lately, to whether or not I wanted to get on or could get on. One is I needed a place to put computer stuff, to have a place where I can do these kind of videos. And the Winnebago just didn't have it. It was just too tiny. And one of the things I love about the Ember, and I'll show you when we look at it, is it has this very large countertop. And part of it, it's like a breakfast bar, but I use it particularly for work. And speaking of that work, I had reached a point in my pension plan, for the first few years, like until you reach 62, you get an extra amount of money each month with your pension check. I think it has to do with medical, but I'm not sure. But anyway, it comes from the state. Well, I turned 62 and I wasn't going to get that anymore. And I had started before that looking for some online opportunities. As I told you, I taught at a university, taught journalism, mostly design and social media, but I'm really interested in the advising side of it. And so I was started out by looking for some online academic advising positions, and I didn't find a lot, and I wasn't getting any hits. And I had made mention of it on Facebook that I was doing this, that I was looking for a job. Well, it wasn't moments later that my former department chair, school director, reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in teaching the class you taught for many years?" I taught media design for many years. And the guy that took over when I left, he retired as well. And I was like, no, unless it's online, and I'm not spending another winter in Northwest Missouri. It was way too cold. And I was like, no, unless it's online, I'm really not interested. Well, a week or two later, I get an email or text message that says, okay, if we put it online, will you teach the course? So they were getting desperate. So I had taught it so many years, I was able to just jump right in and do it easy. So I was able to get an online job doing adjunct work, teaching the course that I taught for 28 years. So not too hard, although it is a course that it's teaching software. I mean, you teach design, but it's also using software, a specific software that students, wouldn't Adobe, they wouldn't necessarily have on their computers. So I do have to coordinate with a lab there on campus and work out how I'm going to be doing that part of it. But the teaching part's easy online. It's the software and being able to see the students. The one thing I miss, I've been doing it now for a few weeks, is being able to see what they have on their computers. But we're working on that, and there's ways to do that. It's just, as much as I'm not a people person, I do miss just visiting with the students. But at least I'm able to do this, and I'm glad for the opportunity. It's really saving me and the ability to keep on traveling, because I'm not sure I could travel full time if I didn't have that. I have a place to stay at my sister's, but I don't know that I would be able to travel. So I'm very, very appreciative of that and excited to be back in the classroom, so to speak. So I'm going to finish this up and work on the next one, which will be the trip down the Pacific Coast Highway. And then I will do one on the trailer itself. And then I'll get you caught up where I am, just to give you an idea. I'm in Michigan right now, and it's a beautiful state. And I'm headed to the East Coast. I've been to the West many times now, so I think it's time to go to the East, particularly the Southeast, when winter comes. So I will I will see you next week. I gotta be disciplined and do this. Again, it's as much for me as it is for anyone else. It's to have the memories. So, but I hope you enjoy it as well. So we'll talk later, and I'll see you next week. Bye.